Jessica's ex-boyfriend spent 8 months systematically destroying her reputation, sabotaging her career, and terrorizing her with psychological warfare. As her therapist, I helped her document what appeared to be a textbook narcissistic revenge campaign. But when I analysed the pattern of his behaviour more closely, I discovered a psychological twist so disturbing that it completely changed my understanding of narcissistic abuse. What I thought was revenge was actually something far more complex and chilling. This revelation about narcissistic psychology will make you question everything you think you know about how abusers operate. Jessica had escaped what she described as the most psychologically abusive relationship of her life. David, her ex-boyfriend of 2 years, was a textbook narcissist, charming, manipulative, emotionally volatile, and completely incapable of accepting responsibility for his actions. The relationship had followed the classic narcissistic abuse pattern: love bombing, devaluation, discard. Jessica had finally found the strength to leave after David's psychological abuse escalated to threats of physical violence. But David wasn't finished with Jessica. What happened next seemed like typical narcissistic revenge, a calculated campaign to punish her for daring to leave him. The revenge campaign started small. David created fake social media accounts to harass Jessica's friends with lies about her character. He contacted her employer with fabricated stories about her mental health. He even showed up at places he knew she frequented, claiming it was coincidence. As Jessica's therapist, I helped her document everything. The harassment escalated systematically: anonymous threatening messages, vandalism of her car, spreading rumors in her professional network. It was textbook narcissistic retaliation for what David perceived as abandonment. But something about the pattern bothered me. In my experience treating narcissistic abuse survivors, revenge campaigns are typically chaotic, impulsive, driven by rage. David's campaign was different, methodical, calculated, almost scientific in its precision. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. With Jessica's permission, I reached out to 2 of David's previous girlfriends to better understand his behavioral patterns. What I discovered defied everything I thought I knew about narcissistic psychology. David wasn't trying to get Jessica back, and he wasn't trying to punish her for leaving. He was systematically creating the perfect victim for his next relationship. Here's what I uncovered. David had performed identical revenge campaigns against his 3 previous ex-girlfriends. But the campaign wasn't the end of his manipulation. It was the beginning of his next psychological game. David was deliberately traumatizing Jessica to make her the perfect damsel in distress for his next target. He understood that his future girlfriend would want to rescue Jessica from his harassment, positioning himself as the reformed ex who was trying to make amends. The most disturbing part? David's harassment was specifically designed to create symptoms that would make Jessica appear unstable to outsiders while making him seem reasonable and concerned. David had studied psychology textbooks to understand trauma responses. He knew exactly how to trigger Jessica's anxiety, depression, and hypervigilance in ways that would make her seem crazy, while making his concerned ex-boyfriend act seem credible. But the ultimate psychological twist was even more chilling. David was planning to rescue Jessica from the very harassment he was inflicting, positioning himself as her savior to win her back, while simultaneously proving to his new girlfriend how caring and reformed he was. This wasn't narcissistic revenge, it was narcissistic rehabilitation theater. David was creating a complex psychological performance where he could play both the reformed abuser and the caring rescuer, satisfying his narcissistic supply from multiple sources. The most chilling evidence was David's detailed journal, which police found during their investigation. He had documented his psychological manipulation like a scientist, noting which tactics created which responses in his victims. David had calculated that exactly 8 months of harassment would create optimal trauma symptoms that would make Jessica grateful for his rescue, while demonstrating to new partners how he'd changed. What David had created wasn't just abuse, It was psychological experimentation on human beings. He was using his ex-girlfriends as unwitting participants in his ongoing narcissistic fantasy of being both the problem and the solution. The most disturbing aspect was that David's plan was working. His current girlfriend at the time was indeed impressed by his efforts to make amends with Jessica and saw it as evidence of his growth and maturity. This case taught me that narcissistic abuse doesn't always end when the relationship ends. Some narcissists use post-breakup harassment as part of a larger psychological manipulation that serves multiple purposes in their ongoing quest for control and admiration. Jessica's story has an empowering ending. Once she understood David's psychological game, she was able to break free from both his harassment and the trauma responses he was deliberately triggering. She also helped his current girlfriend understand the manipulation they were both experiencing. David's case represents what psychologists call multi-victim narcissistic manipulation with rehabilitation fantasy. He orchestrated abuse scenarios that served his psychological needs while allowing him to maintain his image as a reformed person. This case reminds us that narcissistic manipulation can be far more sophisticated than we realize. Sometimes what looks like simple revenge is actually part of a complex psychological performance designed to serve multiple narcissistic needs simultaneously.